The brainwashed leftist masses are really at a crossroads right now, right? For months, the mainstream media has been lying to them, saying that Donald Trump is going to lose this election, that him and his followers are basically Nazi fascists, and of course that Kamala Harris is actually popular and she's going to have no problem beating him in the general election. But now, of course, that those lies have been stripped away, a lot of the leftists are having trouble coping with reality, but not in the mainstream media. So of course, what I want to focus here today is all of these folks in complete denial about what actually happened on election day. So before we get to these clips, please like and comment so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
I do think that in this post-mortem that needs to happen with Democrats, they need to think about why wasn't she given more lead time? Why didn't Biden give her 6 months or a year to run? But there's bigger pictures. That's a micro. There are some macro issues here. The fact that the nation elected somebody like Donald Trump, who even people who voted for him, I talked to so many of these people, will say, I don't like him. I don't like the things he says, but I felt like my life was better under him. I think that a lot of Democrats missed the moment. They were looking at the micro and not the macro.
Do you think the Republicans missed the moment? What about a post-mortem on the Republican Party, which is the Trump Party right now?
They just swept, though. I mean, I've been talking about what I'd like to see from the Republican Party.
They won, but they're morally bankrupt.
But America just gave them. So let me just make my point here. So you have people talking about, well, how did he win Michigan? Because Democrats are saying, oh, she should have talked more about Gaza. No, union halls were empty. Dearborn went for Donald Trump. This is not about a micro issue like Gaza. It's people saying the cost of living is too high. The wages are too low. My life felt better under him. And I know what we'll say. Well, Goldman Sachs says the economy will do better under her. The analysts at UPenn and Wharton.
We'll see.
Nobody who is struggling to make ends meet at the table, like how am I going to pay this bill, cares what Wharton professors say about the economy.
With misinformation.
But just one more thing I want to say. This issue of abortion, which I hope we can unpack more, there are a lot of women who cared about abortion, but they were in states like Pennsylvania where they don't have an ultra-restrictive abortion law. They were voting more because they're like pocketbook issues matter more than if a woman in Alabama is able to get an abortion.
But they're going to do worse under a Trump administration. The only people that are going to do well are the millionaires and the billionaires.
And finally, we talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border.
It's
the border crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The lessons are not.
Knock. Who's there? Oh my gosh, it's Whoopi.
Holy crap, Sunny Hostin has her head stuck in the sand. I mean, every single point that Alyssa Farah Griffin was trying to make there, who, by the way, is a big turncoat that voted for Joe Biden, even though supposedly she's a former Republican and worked under Donald Trump, okay? She's trying to explain this simple point. There are many more issues that people care about aside from the little tiny microcosms of, oh, the Ukraine war, oh, the war in Gaza. We care more about the price of our food, the price of our gas, the safety of our community, right? And when Alyssa tries to bring up the simple fact that, yes, that this border town in Texas that is over 90% Hispanic went for Donald Trump for the first time in 100 years, all right? What does Sunny Hostin do? Oh, those Latino men, they hate women. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. Sunny Hostin is out of her mind. Oh, they're going to be worse off under Trump. Right? They just voted, and guess what? They don't think so because they can remember back longer than 3 years. So every single thing that is being said, Sunny Hostin is having no part of it. She doesn't want to have any self-reflection, any introspection about what the heck did the Democrats do wrong. And that, of course, was they had no answers. They had no solutions. All they had was fantastical attacks against Donald Trump and his allies. But Sunny Hostin, she apparently has drunk her own Kool-Aid. She believes her own lies so much that she refuses to open up her eyes to the truth, even after the whopping loss that Donald Trump just gave Kamala Harris and the leftist establishment, right? So it's time to open your eyes and move on. But of course, she's not the only one with problems.
I want to talk about economy for a second. A few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somebody who was going to be voting for Kamala Harris came up to me and said, oh, my God, Trump's going to win. I go, why is that? He goes, I went to the grocery store. Butter's over $3. I kind of laughed and I said, well, that's kind of reductive, isn't it? Said it to myself. To him, I smiled and I said, good point. But it actually, what everything we're hearing after the election is,
I'm just saying, the $7.
What's that?
The $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold?
Yeah, what
okay.
kind of butter?
Anyway,
depends on where you go. But
Okay, well, yeah, okay. Well,
$7.
anyway, my point is this, Willie. The rent is too damn high, and this guy was saying the cost of butter is way damn too high.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a bit reductive. It ended up being just the point that if you look at the cost of groceries, if you look at the cost of gas, if you look at the cost of things compared to 4 years ago, it was a very simple answer for working class Americans. Things just cost too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we have been saying for years. Everything is too expensive. The inflation is out of control thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But people like Joe Scarborough, no, a woman's right to choose is the most important issue of the day. Okay? It's like they didn't want to believe reality, right? We're sitting here screaming at them that it's tough out here. But since they're stuck in their liberal leftist bubbles and enclaves, they didn't want to open their eyes to the reality. Until, of course, Mika actually says, hey, butter actually is really expensive, even more expensive than you thought. And that, of course, makes Joe Scarborough say, $7? Is that wrapped in gold? Holy crap. You can tell this thought never even crossed his head before until now. Finally, at the end, it's slapping him in the face like a dead fish. I mean, holy crap. But he's not the only one.
Where do you think Democrats should work with the incoming Trump administration? And how do you think exactly they should try to check it, and where?
Well, we should check it by actually telling the truth, unlike Shermichael. So let's be clear. The first thing that the Trump team has stated is that they want to have mass deportations on day one, which is actually not what Americans actually want. This is a Trump white Christian nationalist agenda that was focused on and continues to be focused on deporting Black and brown people as immigrants, saying they want to defund public schools that teach Black history, and implementing a national ban on abortion. Democrats must be the counter on that at every possible level to make sure that our democracy actually has a chance of thriving. Democrats, we have to be very clear of calling them on who they is. Donald Trump is a white supremacist who has a Project 2025 agenda that wants to implement that. And anyone who voted for those policies need to be clearly counted on that. So very practically, John, to your question, the mass deportation of immigrants on MLK Day, which is when Inauguration Day would be, would hurt our economy in damaging ways. Make it very clear that their proposals are about the whitening of America rather than the strengthening of America.
So when asked a simple question, how can Democrats actually work with Donald Trump? What does this gentleman say? Donald Trump's a white supremacist, and he wants to, of course, get rid of all brown and Black people via immigration law. Okay, and of course, he actually makes the bold claim that Americans do not support mass immigration, when as a matter of fact, they do. If we look at over here, Data for Progress from November 4th says that 70% of Americans actually agree with deporting a person who has recently crossed the border without legal status, right? 70%. So if you cross the border recently, get them out of here, okay? And then 67% say a person who crossed the border without legal status and has committed a non-violent crime, 67% say get them out of here. And of course, no one outside of the crazy radical left believe that we should be keeping any violent criminals here in this nation. So yes, this gentleman does not want to work with Donald Trump because at his very core, he is flawed in his reasoning, right? Donald Trump is the worst possible type of person, and he and his supporters must be held to account, even though you just lost an election using that exact same mindset, that exact same line of reasoning. It's almost like the Democrat Party has lost the ability to even speak and think like the everyday common man, but don't take my word for it.
Now, I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language, listen, language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do, it makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university, and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling and just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Michael that I'm not going to say to you, that I'm not going to say to somebody else. I speak the same language to everybody. But that's not what Democrats do. We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think. It's not common sense. And we need to start being the party of common sense again. Joe Biden is not responsible for that. Neither is Kamala Harris. It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense.
So this Democrat strategist is actually correct on many points except one. Yes, it is Biden and Kamala and Obama's fault. They are the ones who actually didn't stand up to any of this progressivism and in many cases actually emboldened it, right? So yes, it is their fault as the party leaders. When the main leaders of the party aren't standing up and saying, yeah, Latinx is stupid, pronouns after names is dumb, describing yourself as wearing a purple dress when clearly you're wearing a purple dress is completely ridiculous. Okay, when they're not the ones doing it and leading by example, then of course it's their fault, right? They've led their party off a cliff, something I am grateful for as a conservative Republican. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.